President Donald Trump appoints to a G7 country Rick Grenell.
Historic moment, nearly a year in the making for U.S. Ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell.
Obviously, you served many years at the United Nations, so you come at this with a depth of knowledge and experience. You're ready to go.
When you work at the UN and you see the world the way it is, you're reminded that when it comes to liberty and human rights and a whole bunch of issues, we're on the same page.
In addition to being the ambassador to Germany, when Andrew Brunson was released from prison in Turkey, and finally got out of Turkish airspace and landed in Germany at 2:30 in the morning, who met him at the airport with an American flag? Ambassador Rick Grenell.
They're rushing us to the airport. There was an Air Force plane that came from Germany that had been on standby.
My wife and I came down the stairs of the plane, and there was somebody waiting for us. And I found out that it was Richard Grenell, and he was standing there with an American flag and handed it to me and said, "Welcome home." So grateful for all that my country had done for me.
Our allies are dying to see an action plan. They're hungry for U.S. leadership.
Then Rick Grenell becomes the acting director of national intelligence.
My next guest did more to expose government corruption than most Washington insiders have done in years.
And he has the guts and the timidity to unleash and unmask the unmaskers, so to speak.
We do now know, though, why the acting DNI, Rick Grenell, was over at the Department of Justice last week. It was to deliver a declassified list of names of Obama administration officials who were behind the unmasking of General Michael Flynn after Flynn was picked up during the presidential transition.
As acting director of national intelligence, I saw the Democrats' entire case for Russian collusion. And what I saw made me sick to my stomach. The Obama-Biden administration secretly launched a surveillance operation on the Trump campaign and silenced the many brave intelligence officials who spoke up against it.
Transparency is never political. Transparency is what the American people demand, and it's what Washington, D.C. is very uncomfortable with.
We are now joined by the former acting director of national intelligence and former ambassador to Germany, our friend Rick Grenell. I can now say our colleague Rick Grenell, as he is going to serve as a senior advisor to the ACLJ, especially on issues involving national security and foreign policy. Rick, it is a thrill to have you with us. We're so glad you're joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one rule for you guys, which is you have to call me Rick.
Well, we will call you Rick, but I will tell you this. I do this. This is kind of called habit. You know, it's just habit. But we will call you Rick. But we are always going to acknowledge the service you've given the country and the appropriate titles you have. But we'll call you Rick, and I know our audience will be glad to know that as well. Let me say this. I want to play for you something that you said yesterday that I have some familiarity with, to say the least. But I want to get your comments on this. Let's go ahead and roll this. This involves the collusion narrative.
As acting director of national intelligence, I saw the Democrats' entire case for Russian collusion. And what I saw made me sick to my stomach. The Obama-Biden administration secretly launched a surveillance operation on the Trump campaign and silenced the many brave intelligence officials who spoke up against it. They presented bogus information as facts. They lied to judges. Then they classified anything that undermined their case.
You know, Rick, as you know, and I lived that case for 3.5 years representing the president and still represent the president. But in that matter, of course, I lived it. And I found that it was unbelievable what we uncovered, but that the government, those in the government, not everybody, of course, but those in the government were actually doing this. And you served, of course, when you were acting DNI, you saw it firsthand. What was going on here? What was the takeout attempt here?
Look, when the Democrats say, you know, there was some smoke, there was some suspicion, so we had to look into this and see if the Trump campaign was talking to Russia. You know, I'm all for our government being, thorough, right? So I take them at their word that in the beginning that they had some suspicions. But Jay, I got to tell you, when you look at the evidence, quickly there were career Foreign Service officers who said, this is baloney, this is not true, the Russians are playing propaganda. The warnings from inside the intelligence community were real and prominent. And yet we had leaders of DOJ and the FBI and CIA that were willing to push away and classify those warnings and silence those warnings because they had an agenda. They weaponized government and they overruled those who warned. You just got to look at two things. Look at all of the declassified footnotes from the reports which talk about the warnings, which talk about individuals. There's also reports that still need to come out that highlight individuals, career officials who gave early warnings and who were silenced and pushed away. Those reports still need to come out. And I would say lastly is even the political people that were briefed. When you look at what they said on CNN and MSNBC, it's dramatically different than what they said under oath in the bowels of Congress during a House committee meeting. It's there. You can go to the DNI website. You can read the transcript from Susan Rice and from Samantha Power and all these individuals who in public would say this is, outrageous collusion. And then in private, they would say, I didn't see anything. There's nothing illegal. So, lastly, I'll just say Susan Rice sent an email to herself on Inauguration Day trying to say, oh, we did everything by the book. Now, come on. Who sends after the fact emails to say I did everything that I was supposed to do? You only do that when you're thinking, oh gosh, I don't think I did everything I was supposed to do, so I better paper over something for the record. We all know that to be true. That's exactly what happened. We just got lucky in that she literally sent the email when Trump was already president. After 12 o'clock on Inauguration Day, she was still sitting in the White House. And at 12:15, the email shows that she sent an email to herself under the Trump presidency, not under the Obama presidency. And that's how we got it, is that she was still in her office and sending emails to herself after the transition of power had happened.
Yeah. Jordan.
Rick, last night you talked about Joe Biden's record as a politician. I want to play this for people. You talked about how many years he's had in this idea of new ideas coming from Joe Biden. Take a listen, folks. This is Rick last night at the RNC.
Every time Joe Biden offers a new idea, you should ask yourself, why didn't he try that over the last 48 years?
And then, Rick, you talked about, too, like, is it going to be a return back to just sending pallets of cash to Iran? And Joe Biden's promised he's going to restart the Iranian nuclear deal. How dangerous is that? I mean, you were the ambassador to Germany. They were concerned about that. You were also acting DNI. I mean, how dangerous would just that old way of thinking, it's not a new idea, of just going back to the same and restarting a nuclear deal with Iran, and also this idea that Joe Biden somehow is going to have new ideas after he's been a politician for 48 years?
Yeah, look, it's the Washington way. It's the Washington story, right? I mean, you look at Schumer, you look at Pelosi, they've been there for decades. And so, the idea that they're going to bring change to this place or new ideas is ridiculous. That's just not going to happen. And I keep saying to people, this city, Washington, D.C., where I am, it's no longer a fight between Republicans and Democrats. It is a fight between the Washington status quo people who love their power, want to hide information from the American people because when they control the information, they get power. It's them versus the rest of America. And this is the same old story in Europe. It's the Berlin establishment versus the rest of Germany and the hardworking Germans. And so it's over and over and over again. I think it's the same old elites. And of course, they get their power and they want to control it. Lastly, I'll just say about Joe Biden's foreign policy. The word consensus sounds really good, right? It sounds like, it's, agreeable. But in foreign policy, I can tell you after 8 years of being at the UN inside the Security Council, if you're looking for consensus, that means 15 countries get to veto our idea, and we have the lowest common denominator of what we all believe. And so Joe Biden's foreign policy philosophy is governed by consensus. We're not going to do anything unless the Europeans sign off. And so you know what that means is that Berlin, Paris, and London get to veto what Washington says. If we have an idea and they don't like it, we don't do it. That's what gave us the Paris Climate Accord, and it gave us the JCPOA. Both of them are documents that are the lowest common denominator of what a bunch of countries think, and it is not good for the American people. We are the only country in the world that gets in trouble when we decide that we want to make decisions for ourselves. I can tell you the 192 countries at the UN that I spent 8 years with, every one of them fights for themselves and for their people, and they don't apologize for it.
You brought up, Rick, this is Logan, by the way, hello. You brought up working with the UN, working with Germany, but you also last night spent a lot of time on America First and the America First platform, which is important to us and our listeners and the listeners of my show, the Reprogram. For you, though, having to take that point of view and then work with Germany, work with the UN, what is that like, and how do you represent, sort of like you said, sort of the nationalist point of view, as you brought up last night, to all of those other places throughout the world?
That's a great question, especially coming from you, because I have more of a style like you do. I hate wearing ties. You'll notice I don't wear ties. I'm begging Jay to let me wear T-shirts when I come on. But
I do with a sport coat, but go ahead.
Okay, well, we'll see. Look, I think you got to be authentic when it comes to diplomacy. I never wore a tie in Germany. Very few times have I met with, the chancellor or something. But there were times that I just wanted to be myself. I wanted to be casual diplomat. And authentic and real, and have a conversation and share what the U.S. position is. We live in modern times. You can read what our policy is on Twitter or on Instagram. And so I think the answer is be authentic, be yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not. And also always remember you represent the American people, not just Washington, D.C.
Rick, I want to say again how excited and encouraged we are to have you as part of our team, especially as a special advisor on national security issues and foreign policy. There's going to be a lot of those in the months ahead, weeks ahead. And again, a great job last night. Great job over your career, but a really great job last night. You delivered hard lines in a very effective way. And I just was thrilled at that. And thanks for joining us. It's going to be great. Look forward to talking to you next week and the weeks to come. Yeah. Very good. Jordan?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. And again, folks, Rick will be joining us throughout the broadcasting. So, throughout each week, he'll be writing some for ACLJ as well. So you would check that out. That'll be exclusive content for the ACLJ website. So it's great to have Rick on board. Rick,
let me say one other thing, and that is, look, these issues that Rick Grenell has dealt with for many years, decades, are going to be the front and center issues that our country's facing in the weeks, months, and years ahead. So getting this kind of expertise and being able to bring that to our audience, we're just thrilled to have Rick Grenell as, I will call him, former acting director and ambassador, at least for this closing, to be part of the team.